On March 14th, US the merch-selling president stood at D Air Force Base, saluting 6 flag-draped coffins, yet on his head, he wore a self-branded baseball cap priced at $55. This scene directly tore apart the last veil of warmth in American politics, declaring that this superpower has fully entered the era of political MCN. This is not merely the collapse of a ceremonial ritual, but the transformation of a mega-influencer who holds nuclear launch authority, one who is openly pricing the nation's most solemn sacrifices and precisely converting them into traffic for his personal online store and capital in fundraising emails. In the cold wind at D Air Force Base in, the bodies of these 6 US soldiers have just been returned from the front line. They died in the U.S.I Joint EF operation launched half a month ago. According to long-standing American political conventions, on such occasions the president should maintain restraint and mourning. Yet the nuclear button influencer wore a baseball cap printed with 45 to 47. This cap is sold for $55 on his profit-driven website and is a typical piece of fan merchandise. As soon as the ceremony ended, his Always Win company pushed fundraising emails across the entire internet. At the center of the email was a photo of him saluting the coffins. Below it, it clearly stated, donations starting at $1,000 would grant access to a national security briefing membership. The so-called national security briefing, at this moment, was no longer top-secret information, but had become a commodity, like a paid knowledge course, used to induce supporters to place orders. This war, named EF, was from the very beginning a cold-blooded game launched for political dividends. Since the operation began on February 28th, it has resulted in the deaths of 13 US soldiers and injuries to more than 140. On the Iranian side, more than 1,300 civilians have been killed. Military advisors at the P had repeatedly issued warnings that ammunition was about to run out, but these warnings meant nothing in the face of the White House's logic of traffic and attention. The nuclear button influencer even posted on social media, saying, "Killing is a great honor," and then proceeded to boast about cutting the renovation budget for the White House ballroom. Under such logic, the lives of frontline soldiers are no different from a piece of carpet in the White House. They are all just numbers that can be used to balance accounts or increase exposure. This kind of profiteering built upon the dead is not an isolated case. Looking back at the nuclear button influencer's business trajectory, he had long been laying the groundwork for this kind of political business. On February 17, 2024, at a sneaker convention in P, under the pressure of $450 million in legal debt, the nuclear button influencer personally promoted a gold limited edition Always Win sneaker priced at $399. At the time, people thought he had simply gone desperate and was trying to pay off debt by exploiting remaining value. But now it appears that was merely his first test in fully e-commerceizing the presidency. This utilitarian view toward military sacrifice has been consistent. On September 3, 2020, The Atlantic revealed that during a visit to France, he refused to visit a World War I American cemetery, citing concern that rain would ruin his hairstyle, and privately referred to fallen soldiers as losers. In that cemetery lie more than 1,800 American soldiers from World War I. Yet in his view, the dead who cannot provide votes or cash are not even worth getting wet in the rain. This indifference was displayed in full on October 17, 2017. At that time, while consoling the family of a soldier killed in Niger, he bluntly said over the phone, he knew what he signed up for. The underlying logic of that statement is this: once you hand your life over to the state, any loss is simply contractual cost. Then on August 26, 2024, he forcibly filmed a promotional video in Section 60 of a national cemetery and got into a physical altercation with staff, completely blurring the boundary between sacred commemoration and political spectacle. A cemetery holds the remains of 400,000 veterans. To ordinary people, it is sacred ground, but in the eyes of political MCN logic, it is merely a ready-made live-stream backdrop filled with emotional value. US war decision-making has now completely degenerated into a tool of financial manipulation and traffic monetization. On March 1st, in the first trading hour after the launch of Operation EF, the stock prices of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon surged by 12%. Within the first 48 hours, the US military had already expended $5.6 billion worth of precision-guided munitions. As these weapons are consumed, orders for the military-industrial complex come in like snowflakes. In just 2 weeks, the market value of these defense giants increased by nearly $100 billion. At the same time, several senior lawmakers made precisely timed purchases of defense sector options 1 week before the war, achieving average returns exceeding 400%, involving as much as $320 million. This forms a perfect closed loop. Politicians launch wars, arms manufacturers reap profits, lawmakers divide the spoils through insider trading, and the president monetizes the war's attention and traffic. In this cycle, the only ones who actually pay the cost are the lives of rank-and-file soldiers and the blood of Iranian civilians. Even more ironically, the US war machine has weakened to the point where it must rely on low-cost substitutes. On March 6th, the US military deployed large numbers of Lucas low-cost drones in southern Iran. This was not an effort to save money, but a necessity. High-end ammunition stockpiles had already been depleted, leaving only imitation products priced at $35,000 per unit. Due to their extremely crude construction, these cheap weapons, in an operation on March 13th, directly destroyed Gandhi Hospital in Tehran, resulting in the deaths of 270 people, including patients. During the same period, the White House U.S. 250th Anniversary Task Force announced an investment of $48 million for fireworks displays. On one side, the Pentagon was scrambling over a $28.8 billion ammunition shortfall. On the other, the White House was burning money on celebratory displays to artificially boost morale. This kind of lavish spectacle, contrasted with the crude deaths of frontline soldiers, forms the most brutal image of an empire on the brink of decline. Many people ask, how can a president sell hats in front of coffins while simultaneously turning national security briefings into a commercial product? The answer is this: under the current US system, the president's role has degraded from executor of the national will into a top-tier influencer with nuclear launch authority. His decision-making logic is no longer based on long-term geopolitical interests, but on the KPI metrics of his always win online store. For an influencer, there is no such thing as dignity or shame, only click-through rates and conversion rates. In the nuclear button influencer's business logic, the 13 American soldiers and 1,300 Iranian civilians are not lives that deserve compensation or respect, but background elements used to drive fundraising email engagement. This is the extreme objectification resulting from American pragmatism pushed to its limits. In the American value system, everything is tradable is the underlying logic. Once this logic infiltrates politics, politics turns into a large-scale reality show. Voters are no longer citizens, but fans. The president is no longer a leader, but the top performer under an MCN agency. Under the long-term influence of Hollywood and social media, the American public's perception of politics has already been entertainment-driven. As long as the performance is convincing and the persona is stable, even selling products beside coffins can be seen by supporters as authenticity and individuality. The coffins of US soldiers have become the president's sales counter. On the surface, this appears to be the nuclear button influencer's personal greed. In essence, it represents the complete privatization and traffic-driven transformation of the American state apparatus. This collective cultural decline has provided the most fertile ground for the nuclear button influencer-style business politics. The coffins of US soldiers have become the president's sales counter. On the surface, this appears to be the nuclear button influencer's personal greed. In essence, it represents the complete privatization and traffic-driven transformation of the American state apparatus. This marks the loss of a normal sovereign state's capacity for self-correction. In a functional system, decision-making centers on maintaining systemic stability. In the current US system, it centers on maintaining the president's personal cash flow and traffic pool. 3 sets of data are enough to support this logic. First, the cost of each fallen US soldier continues to depreciate in the eyes of decision-makers, while political fundraising conversion rates continue to rise. A single photo from a coffin transfer ceremony can generate donations sufficient to cover the cash cost of several small-scale military conflicts. Second, the level of integration between the military-industrial complex and personal political financing has reached a historical peak. The $320 million in insider trading by lawmakers is only the tip of the iceberg. Third, the degree of hollowing out of ammunition stockpiles in 2026, combined with the increase in ceremonial spending, forms a death cross, indicating that the country would rather spend money on the appearance of prosperity than on actual national defense. This is no longer political competition at the level of states, but the final extraction of surplus value from human life by top-level predators. When power and capital fully merge, and even death, the last form of dignity, is openly priced, the system has become terminally ill. The nuclear button influencer's actions merely expose this decay. By saluting in a $55 hat, he is effectively telling the world that nothing in this country remains sacred or beyond commodification. Not loyalty, not life, not even the democratic system once promoted as a beacon. The MCNization of politics inevitably leads to short-term and extreme decision-making. To maintain traffic, conflict must constantly be manufactured. To monetize that traffic, boundaries must continuously be broken. Today he can sell hats. Tomorrow he can sell ceasefire agreements. The day after, he could even package the right to use nuclear weapons as a premium membership package. Under this logic, soldiers' lives are merely accessories, civilians' blood is just background noise, and the entire world becomes a backdrop in this super influencer's live stream. Live stream. For anyone who still holds illusions about peace, this is an extremely dangerous signal. This top-to-bottom commercialization of the United States has directly reduced its credibility in international affairs to zero. We must accept a reality. The America that once pretended to speak of human concern and uphold even superficial norms is gone. In its place stands a massive commercial monster, wearing gold sneakers, a $55 hat, and calculating commissions among the dead. Now that American politics has devolved into MCN-style merchandising, the moment each life is assigned a price marks the beginning of this empire's total collapse of credibility. When the president reaches into the coffins of the dead to grab cash, what he is really pulling out is the last trace of this nation's dignity and its future.